No niin. No niin in Finnish means everything. It can mean let's start, so I say no niin. So good morning to everyone and welcome to this fantastic Science for Sustainability conference, which used to be called Sustainability Science Days earlier. We two are the scientific directors of this conference. My name is Susanna Lehvävirta. I'm the director of Sustainability Science Institute of the University of Helsinki, HELSUS. And here is my dear colleague.
Hi everyone, my name is Kirsi Niinimäki. I'm professor in design, especially fashion research is my area, and I come from Aalto University.
So I have we don't have a speech for you because we thought that the most meaningful speeches will be given by other people in this conference. But I have some housekeeping items for you. So first of all, there are some screens in this space that should be informing you about the program, so you can check the program from the screens. And there's help available regarding all kinds of questions at the registration. And we have a lot of student staff who are wearing black T-shirts, I guess, with a staff at the back with a green. And you can contact them for all kinds of problems or issues or things that you want to ask from them. And then there was something more, but I can't recall what it was. Let's check it from here. Yes, some of the sessions are full. So for those sessions, we will prioritize those who registered to that particular session. So should you want to go to a session that is full and you didn't register, you might be neglected at the door. So please then go and check for another session. I'm sure there's plenty of interesting program that you can look for. I think that's all for now. Toilets are downstairs from here. That's an important thing, of course. And then I give the floor to Kirsi.
Thank you. We start the day by really interesting feedback on what happened yesterday. So it's my great pleasure to invite Jussi Impio and the solution group on the stage and give a short reflection on the solution day, what happened yesterday. Welcome.
Thank you, Kirsi. Good morning. My name is Jussi Impio. I'm from Aalto University, and together with Elina Tanninen from University of Helsinki, we have been running a project called Ratkaisuryhmä. Sounds very crispy in Finnish. It sort of like translates to Solution Circle. It is a spin-off from Sustainability Science Days, Science for Sustainability conference, continuity over many years, collaboration between Aalto University and University of Helsinki. Why did we put up this spin-off was that we found out that we don't reach the societal stakeholders as much as we would like to with the conference setting, so we try something else. So Ratkaisuryhmä in its first pilot round is 40 people, 20 researchers, 10 from Aalto, 10 from Aalto, 10 from University of Helsinki, 5 major businesses, 2 startups, 6 cities, 3 ministries, 2 funding institutions. So our aim is to do cross-sectoral work to understand the cross-sectoral bottlenecks for green transition. Identify the bottlenecks, find cross-sectoral solutions for these bottlenecks, and formulate implementable action plan. And that's what we have done since the beginning of the year, and yesterday was the sort of like the main day. So from a big bunch of bottlenecks in green transition, we identified within this team 4 critical ones that were critical for these participants. So the demand side of the solutions for green transition, the acceptability of the solutions, lack of long-term vision, of green transition or transformation, and then focused on right type of innovation policy and innovation work. So how we moved forward, we created lots of different kind of solution paths throughout the months, and then we came up with selections of key solutions for these challenges, and yesterday we developed these ideas further. So now we are at the stage where we are doing analysis of all the kind of like a bunch of materials that we managed to get together. And next step is to come and build the action plan. But one of the main takeaways is the collaboration and the cross-sectoral collaboration. And with very fresh experiences of that, I can say that it was super energizing for everybody to learn from different perspectives to the same topics that you might research or you might encounter in your daily work. You could almost hear the sound of new neural connections kind of like building in people's skulls throughout the process. So we really, as a ratkaisuryhmä, encourage you throughout these 2 days to build and explore new collaborations and crossing the fences and really breaking out from the silos. So it's super important to have the will to understand each other and really will to learn from everybody else. So these were my short greetings from Ratkaisuryhmä. Thank you.
So now it's time to start the official program of our days. So the theme for this panel discussion, what we start, is resilient system breaking the sustainability bubbles. So shall we start with the introduction of our panelists? So we have Paavo Järvensivu, serves as a BIOS. You can stand up. And University of Helsinki studies, for example, rapid sustainability transformation of society with a recent focus on active industrial policy and science-driven planning. Second is Emilia Nygård, is the ex-chair of the ReGeneration 2030, a fully youth-led organization uniting youth activists for sustainability from the Nordic and Baltic Sea region. And the third panelist is Matti Pihlajamaa, serves as a VTT and studies, among other things, how science, technology and innovation policies can effectively promote change towards a more sustainable future. But we start the day by a welcome or opening message from Climate and the Environment Minister Sari Multala. So let's start with the video.
Distinguished members of the research community, esteemed vice-rectors, dear students and guests. Thank you for this opportunity to open this panel discussion on resilient systems. What might be a desired future look like in 2045? This question given to me to open this discussion is worth reflecting on, because looking ahead helps us navigate the present. My answer draws from the cross-government scenario exercise presented in part 1 of the government report on the future, published this September. The report outlines 4 possible futures for Finland and explores how we might prepare for each. Much of the media attention around the report was focused on the most alarming scenario, crumbling world, where the focus is on the breaking world order, which obviously in the current international political climate is something we need to prepare for. However, today I want to turn our attention to the most hopeful scenario, world of cooperation. In this scenario, we witness a profound shift in how societies produce, consume and interact with nature. The state of the environment and various natural habitats has begun to recover. This is a result of effective global implementation of international agreements on climate change, biodiversity and the environment. The economy is based on the sustainable use of natural resources, and the production and consumption of goods and services are guided towards greener and healthier choices through internationally agreed measures and agreements that, for example, regulate the use of critical raw materials. The green transition is no longer aspirational. It is unfolding in socially, economically and ecologically just manner across the globe. The benefits are distributed more fairly between countries that produce and utilize raw materials. Environmental risks are now embedded in economic decision-making. Renewable energy sources have grown faster than total energy demand, and emissions have declined significantly. Circular economy models, ecosystems restoration and nature-positive innovations are not only mitigating climate change and biodiversity loss, they are reshaping the very foundations of our economies. Smarter design, reuse and recycling have made consumption more resource efficient, and material use has dropped substantially. These are not just ecological imperatives, they are strategic choices for long-term resilience and prosperity. Science and innovation are at the heart of this transformation. In the scenario, trust in science is high, and data is shared openly to support evidence-based policy making. Breakthroughs in synthetic biology, medicine and materials science enabled by AI, quantum technologies and digitalization accelerate ecological solutions. Education systems evolve to foster not only individual potential but also collective capacity to live within planetary boundaries. But 2045 is only 20 years away. Many of these developments may feel distant today. 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries have already been exceeded. We are not on track to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. Biodiversity loss is accelerating even here in Finland, and the war in Europe reminds us how fragile cooperation can be. Still, we must ask, what must we do to get on track? To reach a world built on cooperation, Finland should focus on 3 topics following. First, strengthening international collaboration. Solving the triple crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution requires global cooperation. As a small nation, Finland's best chance lies in active participation and international efforts to enhance stability and sustainability. To this end, Finland continues to push for ambitious climate goals within the EU. Finland is a party to more than 100 international environmental agreements. Second, aligning with planetary boundaries. There is still plenty of work to do to align our societies within the ecological limits of the planet. This requires integrating environmental risks in a more thorough manner into all levels of decision-making and ensuring that the green and digital transitions are both just and inclusive. Research can offer ways forward in this endeavour too. Third, investing in science, innovation and skills. Trust in science, open data and shared knowledge must be the foundation of our progress towards desired futures. Therefore, the government has committed to increasing public R&D funding, aiming to raise R&D intensity to 4% of GDP by 2030 in a long-term, strategic manner. With significant public research and development investments, we aim to accelerate sustainable economic growth, strengthen competitiveness and increase productivity. We believe that a small open economy, Finland will only succeed with expertise and innovative people. With our increased national public research and development investments, over €1 billion during this government term, aimed at the renewal of economic life and society. Finally, I want to highlight Finland has a strong tradition of evidence-based policymaking and ranks above the EU average in how citizens trust science. These are things we want to hold on to and definitely belong to our desirable future. I wish you all an inspiring conference and fruitful discussions ahead.
Okay, then I wish our dear panelists would come on stage and take a seat. And while they are taking the seat, I want to highlight the fact that we are willing to receive questions from the audience in Presemo, and Kirsi will be keenly looking at any appearing questions. And if you feel like you don't access Presemo or feel that it's too complicated, you are of course always free to raise your hand and stand up and speak. We are not prepared to carry mics, but I'm sure this space is small enough so we can hear everyone, and we can repeat your question from here if we think it's too low a voice. So don't be shy and participate in the discussion. So welcome once again. And I have a warm-up question for you, which is that what thoughts or feelings did you have when watching the video greeting from our Minister Multala? How did you feel about that? Do you want to start?
Sure. Yes, and thanks for having us here. Well, of course, I applaud the kind of a constructive vision that I think Sari Multala pointed towards. Then, obviously, the question is that how can we build governmental programs that are strongly aligned with that constructive vision rather than, to me, the question is how do we ensure that we are investing boldly in that direction rather than some other direction?
What about Matti?
Yeah, thank you. I think I like the practice of doing foresight and looking into the future and doing the different kind of scenarios, and I especially like that it wasn't just presenting that these are the possible futures, but she went to discuss, okay, how can we make sure that this scenario will realize over the others? But then when she described what should we do to make that happen, I couldn't help feeling a little bit that it was more like continuing what we are currently doing and on the same path. And I'm not totally convinced that it's sufficient. So maybe that's the main.
How many in the audience share the worry raised by Matti? Hand up. Quite many. So our minister should work even harder, I guess. What about you, Emilia?
Yeah, also thank you for having us here. I think it was nice that she brought up the global cooperation and she listed how many agreements we've signed. And one thing is being part of the agreements, but one thing is also following them. And I mean, if you think about the SDGs that we talked about a couple of years ago, how many have we actually fulfilled? And those are supposed to be fulfilled by 2030, and now we're talking about 2045, so we're just pushing constantly, and this is called breaking the sustainability bubbles. So I think we need to break them now and not just be greenwashy and talk about greener and healthier and better. I think we've heard those words, and we're a bit tired of hearing them if they're not actually up to what they're supposed to be. So yeah, and then one thing that she mentioned is the trust in science is high. And maybe in Finland it still is. But we also know that that is something that's, you know, on the brink in a lot of ways. So we need to be sure of actually keeping up that trust.
That's true, that's serious. And I think now it's a very nice time to have your own statements started. We asked all the panelists to prepare one statement slide, a bold statement, and now we start with the first one, which is from Emilia, and it's step up or step aside. And of course, I don't want to ask Emilia, what do you mean by this?
So this is a statement that we use quite often in our organization, and as you can tell, it's the fact that we want leaders to step up, take the action that they're supposed to take. Because there's a lot of younger generations that are ready to take on the actions, but it's hard to get to that spot. So if you're not ready to do anything, let other people lead the way instead.
Very good point. And remember that you can send in comments, critical comments and questions. And Kirsi, you will yell at me if I don't notice you, right? Okay, any comments to this one? Who votes for this statement? Who supports this statement? Wow, many hands up. Okay, and then the next statement, which reads, please feel, no, please. That is a great statement, isn't it? Please feel the Now I need some technical help.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So this comes from Matti. Our view of innovation is too narrow. Can you please argue for that?
Yes, and this connects nicely what Sari Multala was saying about that we need to invest in science and technology and innovation, and we're increasing. It's the only thing that we're actually currently investing in. We have all our kind of lots of hopes that innovation will solve our problems. But I think we often have quite a limited view of what those problems are that innovation should solve and what kind of innovations we actually need. And kind of maybe our imagination is kind of restricted in this respect.
Can you give an example, like a concrete example?
Well, kind of, we used to think in technological gadgets, to put it bluntly. That innovation is some piece of machinery that then we can sell and export, and then we use that kind of, we get tax revenue, economic growth, and then we use those funds to solve all kinds of problems, if we ever get there. But what I think one of the key issues is that those maybe what we think of innovations, those technologies, they often don't solve all kinds of critical problems. We wish all kinds of problems, and when we identify certain problems, we might not be looking at the answers from the right places.
Okay, and then we have another statement which goes again like, you can use the decimal. But here is no, why do I get this one? Third statement. The third statement comes from Paavo, and that's sustainability transformation requires a well-planned industrial policy. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, that's, of course, giving a hint to Minister Multala, for instance, how to drive the constructive vision forward. So I guess we all here in this room can relate to what sustainability transformation means. Then we can imagine, or we have already talked about a kind of a step change, so not doing the same thing all over again, but moving the direction, getting more speed and so forth, getting things done. So that is required. Then industrial policy, that's actually, I think, a bit under talked about thing in Finland. It's mostly talked about in a kind of, you get a sense of a protectionist politics where you try to defend your domestic established industries. But this is very different from the kind of green industrial policy discussions where the whole idea is to build on a vision. What are the social, ecological goals for industrial policy, and then setting steps, how do we get there? So it's in contrast with this kind of a current neoliberal mode of governance where the idea is that you tweak market rules and then you wait for the market, see what happens, and then you tweak the rules again. But this is more getting to the content of economy and society, what we want to achieve, and driving forcefully towards that. Then the well-planned part is that it should be based on the best possible information, science on the ground level, of course, and then societal discussion that what do we choose? It's not there's not just one alternative to get, but what do we choose? So it's about enabling this kind of planning, public planning and societal deliberation on the big choices that we are making.
So do the two of you see some connection to Emilia's statement about needing to step aside if you can't take responsibility and action? Do you think that kind of people who are in power but are not doing enough are like bottlenecking the kind of development that you were advocating?
Yeah, I would break that into two things. So there's this public capacity to plan and do good policy. I think that there are plenty of skilled people and processes. We need more of that and intentionally invest in that capacity. Then there's the kind of political mandate, which isn't there. So there I would say that step down and for others step up. It's pretty hard to change the whole kind of political ideology or mindset that you're very much invested in. So maybe it needs this process of stepping down and up.
Yeah, and I think this kind of, and even if you had the political will to do something, then you need to kind of get different actors on board. And there are, of course, all kinds of power dynamics there that you need to be aware of. And we have these kind of experiences in the past of exercises that governments are trying to invite everyone on the same room, trying to decide, okay, what we're going to do. And if the power dynamics are not taking into account those who already have the power, they end up defining what the goals and methods are. So kind of how to also address those issues, how to make this kind of inclusive processes where everyone that need it are involved, but still ensure that it isn't watered down. I think.
Yeah, and continuing that for a bit, so how to make sure that the established companies are not the ones that get to kind of do things again in the same way, but with more government resources.
Yeah,
how do we ensure that the renewing part of economic life gets to actually do their things?
Just rephrasing what they're already doing with new buzzwords.
Yeah, and here I want to also ask Emilia, do you have any further reflections on the two other statements by Matti and Paavo, or did we already empty the bucket?
I think we might, I think first of all you should send the statements to Sari Multala as a feedback in the feedback form. And then we kind of touched upon this, but when we talk about, doing the same thing over and over again, I think if we really wanted to, we could, right? And I always think about this example of COVID. People weren't necessarily happy with how we did things, but everyone decided on one thing. Each land kind of decided their own thing. And we all went on board with it. We were okay with it. People adjusted, right? So why can't we do the same with other things, such as climate change? I don't get it.
Good point. Any questions or comments from the audience at this point? Yeah, I see a hand up. Do you want to just stand up and speak, or shall I bring you the mic?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Maris Lior from think tank Vasemmistofoorumi. Yeah, that's actually something that's been talked a lot about on the EU level at the moment, that the EU lacks a sense of urgency regarding the climate or the environmental catastrophe that we're experiencing. And the question is how to rate. With COVID, we have the sense of urgency. But then with the climate issues and the environmental issues, people are just thinking that we have time. And then the scientists are saying that, no, we don't. So there's the how to raise that sense of urgency that would actually translate into political action. That's a critical question.
Do our panelists want to comment on that? How to create the sense of urgency that would make our decision makers react?
Yeah, that's a big question, and there have been all kinds of climate urgency statements in the past, and I'm not sure how effective they have been. And I think many of us during COVID were kind of looking at whether this will change the dynamics, whether we will get kind of get the capacity to do big changes in a short time, and then it seems we didn't have the capacity, and I don't have the answer. I just think climate change it's a slow process, and maybe even if we see it here, it's kind of how to address it. It's less straightforward or as quick as COVID kind of measures that you can just close down the airports.
Besides COVID, we had another moment of urgency, which was, of course, Russia's attack to Ukraine. And there, my interpretation of the situation in Europe was that there was actually a space for quick decarbonization of Europe that was based on this material logic that actually we're importing fossil fuels from Russia and elsewhere. So to get out of that dependency, we need to align these climate and industrial perspectives, competitiveness perspectives, and then we can actually benefit both ways. But I guess that since we haven't been doing that already, it started looking that it's pretty difficult to do in, let's say, 6 months, in 1 year, something like that, to get to speed in this. So then, since we haven't been already doing it, then we resort to these kind of second best, or I don't know, fifth best alternatives where you just build military competence based on old fossil-fueled systems. So I would just kind of think that since this urgency will kind of, like Multala was talking about the different scenarios, I think it's quite obvious that we have to do this green transition in the midst of certain systems crumbling all the time. So we don't get this happy, nice, tranquil place to do the green transition. So any moment is very good to do this well-planned industrial policy. Start with that, and then there will be moments of more acuteness and then slower periods.
May I jump in here? Sorry, Emilia, you can.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the main people that are experiencing this and are talking about this are indigenous communities, or communities that are based around, environment. For example, people that live on islands. And I think that we're kind of missing the connection to nature, so that if you would live in and be dependent on nature, you would see this much more. I see it much more where I'm from, like in a little city on the countryside, compared to what I see in Helsinki. So we need to be more connected to nature and see the differences in what is happening, but also maybe, you know, this like having it in our backyards and not being so distanced from it.
Okay, there's been a lot of statements that we need to do a change. And it was really nice what Paavo was also pointing out, this, that we need this industrial policy. And one of our questions is that how societies, this not how then to do this. How can societies, researchers, activists, governments and industries form shared vision of where we need to go and how to get there, given the diversity of narratives around sustainability? So any proposals how to do this?
I do. Well, there's actually a curious, I don't know if you have been following, but there's this curious tendency now in Finland and elsewhere that this kind of focused vision building or serious foresight or planning is kind of now coming everywhere. There's this chair of the technology industries, Ville Voipio, has put up a process for this, calling scientists and industries build up kind of corner poles for energy futures to see what is possible and what is not possible that would then serve private decision-making and public decision-making and so forth. We in BIAS are for instance, in a strategic research project that actually started today. We are building then pathways upon these kind of corner poles. So getting a sense of what is possible in the next, let's say, 15, 20 years, and then building together these pathways in a kind of in a very serious manner, creative but serious in the sense that it's long-term idea. We're not just starting all over again. So it's not the kind of foresight where you look at trends or what is currently happening and then momentarily put your own organization into that picture, but it's building long-term and together with different stakeholders. So this kind of, and I sense some of that in the ratkaisuryhmä as well. So this kind of thing is clearly coming together. From a research point of view, the best thing would be that there would be a political mandate for this. So it would directly lead to, that would serve directly public investments, planning, and so forth. Currently, we don't have that, so then we have researchers, industries, even public administration people doing it despite the government mandate, which is all right. we can proceed with that as well.
Paavo, if you think of innovations related to this question that Kirsi brought up, I have a feeling that we have a lot of innovations in the world, even innovations that target sustainability, like research innovations. But the thing is that we are still working quite sectorially. How can we move in relation, regarding innovations, how can we move to more like collaborative doing of things where we don't miss the other sectors? How can we bring researchers, activists, governance and industries together for innovation and cross-sectoral, working cross-sectorally? How could that happen? A small, easy question, right?
Yeah, I think this is also connected to the issue of what we think of innovations, and because if we think of them quite narrowly, you know, usually the way we develop innovations and promote innovation by public policy is that it's a kind of bottom-up process. We have companies who have their own kind of, from their company's perspective, they have their own business interests, and they try to fulfill those. And this kind of leads to maybe often partial solutions. And then well, let's take this as an example. There's a problem of plastic waste that's been broadly recognized in this EU priority. And what's our kind of narrow solution in it? By putting the bottle cap here. But then if we, well, it doesn't really solve the issue, doesn't it? But if we want to then go a little bit farther, okay, how do we ensure that this whole bottle doesn't go into the waters or ground? But we have to develop all kinds of recycling systems and circular economies. Then we get to this cross-sectoral. Everyone has to work together, different sectors, and we need all the industries to come together. And even, but that's a better solution. But then maybe even the bigger question is that how do we ensure that no one uses this kind of plastic bottles? How do we change the kind of our use of packaging? And that then goes beyond collaboration between industries, and it becomes this whole systemic, societal, institutional, cultural thing. And so I think we need some push to make this, and it could be political push. It might happen also bottom up from different parts of society, that we raise the kind of attention to these root causes, that are often quite systemic problems and also social problems, and not just what kind of new features or improved technologies we need to develop. I don't know. I forgot the question already.
But no worries. It was about how can we bring different sectors and actors together. I think you really did answer to that as well. Emilia has a comment then.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of representing the activists here on this stage, but what we often talk about is the activists that you see are usually the people that are chaining themselves to the streets or having signs. It's very bold, it's very big, it's where it actually happens or where you need to kind of make a statement. But I would like to let you think how you could be an activist in your daily life, because we need activists kind of from all, so we need sectors, like people working together, but we also need activists in very different ways. So the way that we work is more advocacy, and you need to kind of have that. And I've had the discussion with politicians many times that if I would come on a stage and scream, they wouldn't listen to me. So we need to kind of get inputs from everywhere, from different angles and perspectives.
And we have a question or comment from the audience.
Thank you so much for your insights. I'm Emma, a doctoral researcher in design studies from Germany. I would like to connect what you said before about why, when COVID happened, there was this kind of massive system change that was implemented, and I also don't understand, or at least like I have a hypothesis of why this was possible, and instead when we talk about climate crisis and the impact of especially capital-centered societies on ecosystems and communities. And I have a reflection, and I wonder if it resonates with you or which comments you have about this, which is possibly this whole complete system change was possible because there was a very direct and tangible impact on economy. So I wonder if in policymaking or let's say top-level discourses, if there would be a very strong highlight on how climate disruption will impact economically societies, then there would be a growing sense of urgency, like maybe we are not grasping what it will mean in the existing realities, because it's like more subtle in how it evolves until a point in which the impact will be too strong. So I wonder like how this reflection resonates with you. I'm curious. Thank you.
I think this question, you are free to answer in whatever way, but I think this also nicely brings us to the issue of scale. Like, at what scale should we be targeting things? We have had now a couple of comments or thoughts already presented about the urgency versus too slow climate change, not pushing us to immediate action. So, but are there other scales, and how do you want to comment the time scale as well? And very good question, comment from the audience.
Yeah, I can start. Thanks. It's a very good question. Well, I have the sense that it's extremely difficult for politicians and also the kind of political processes and the administrative processes we have to consider these long-term effects and give a value to them and then base the decisions now upon those. We just haven't been used to that, and it seems to also challenge the human mind quite a bit. To take seriously something that happens in 20 or 50 or 100 years. We have been trying to do this in one of strategic research projects called WISE, and we did these experiments with experts and politicians where we precisely sought to do this. So we presented future images, and we kind of brought them to the future, carrying these decisions that they make now and in certain years and so forth. But it's then when you come to your ordinary kind of daily politics, then you kind of immediately forget what happened in the future, in the exercise. It's just extremely difficult to build that in the current processes. But I think thinking in terms of industrial systems and the renewal there, industrial policy, there's this natural sense of these timescales. So when you're doing industrial level investments, you think already in the minimum is, let's say, 5 years, and then it goes to 100 years. So when you pose the question that should we build more nuclear, for instance, there's a certain time scale, and actually there's a very long time scale as well, but like beyond industrial. And I think that if we would concentrate more on this planning issue, it would kind of more naturally bring these very crucial time frames for us.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is very good, very insightful what you said, and I think the kind of it's kind of this giant paradox and elephant in the room that we know we have these calculations that if we don't stop the climate change, if we don't address biodiversity loss, the economy will it will just slump. It will take huge. It's the worst thing that we can do to our economy. But then maybe it's kind of as Paavo said, the kind of time scales that it's easier to focus on things that are in the very near future, maybe 5 years, and we know we have this kind of mechanisms. We have electoral cycles. We know that in companies like this, CEO terms are getting shorter and shorter all the time. So we don't maybe have these kind of mechanisms that would incentivize people to commit to this midterm goals and planning. But or maybe it's just that we're not used to doing so. You could imagine that, for example, pension funds would have incentives to look at, far in the future and ensure that, the climate change doesn't, eat our pensions, but.
And how do they invest the money?
Yeah, exactly.
I think what we're lacking and why we're not seeing so far in the future is because there's a lack of empathy. Who do you care about? Do you care about the present people, or do you care about your grandchildren or whatever? And I think everyone, and for all the different political ranges, you care about someone, but it's the futures that we need to care about. And I also am lacking this sort of environmental justice aspect, and that you don't really pay for nature. I had this professor who said a really good statement that if you think about economics, your private economics, you want to save as much, and you have this saving bank, and you don't want to take away from that saving bank, right? You want to spare it. And then if you think about the way that we work right now, is that we're taking constantly away from our saving bank, the nature. We're constantly just pulling out. And what are we putting in? So, yeah.
And then we have another question or comment from the audience. Idil, please.
Thank you. Thank you, dear panelists. My name is Idil Gazi Ulusoy. I am Professor of Sustainable Design in Aalto.
Put the mic like this.
I'm Professor of Sustainable Design in Aalto, and I have been researching sustainability-oriented innovation for a little bit more than 20 years. And my comment and question relates to the statement about well-planned, need for well-planned industrial policy. Given we know that strategic foresight has a lot of shortcomings when it comes to moving towards normative futures, which we are trying to do, and industrial policy making processes are also not fit for purpose. I would like to hear your comments about institutional innovation and innovating how we make industrial policy. What are your thoughts about that? Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Well, there's certainly a lot of place for institutional innovation there. What we have been doing in our research unit is that we have been trying to kind of do it in a shadow way, in the sense that if this institution would exist, what would it do and how? And we have been experimenting with that space, which has bring me the idea that it's first of all possible to do this kind of thing, but then obviously we are now, when you move to kind of formalizing it or making it official, having a political mandate, that brings a lot of different kinds of pressure in it. For instance, how to make sure that there's this so-called countervailing power, that everyone gets a voice, that needs to have a voice, which is kind of preset in that, so that it doesn't again go to that old process where if you have money and power relations, your voice will be heard and so forth. So this is one extremely crucial aspect in it. But I think there's a lot of things we can learn in history also about this. It was this book, which I sadly can't now remember precisely, but it was Rainer Kattel and two other writers, Entrepreneurial State and They went, they looked at these historical organizations that had done something like this related to innovation, technology and industrial policy, and how this was, for instance, in Germany, it led to the kind of telecommunications and what have you. And they talk about charismatic organizations that kind of came from the periphery. They were so good and attractive that they kind of replaced some of the official organizations and institutions in the government and so forth. And then I guess the basic process is, and then you become sort of institutionalized in the wrong sense, and it starts looping again and so forth. But I would like to see more of that. We haven't been, like, now we're in this total austerity mode where it's basically impossible to talk about capacity building and institutional creativity in the public sector and so forth. We really need to move from that.
Perhaps I can take one question from here. So we have one question, but we actually prepared with you before the panel. What would it look like if we prioritize the transformation of institutions, market and the cultural change as much as technology itself? I think that this goes quite nicely what you have been discussing. And also how to promote this, what kind of policies are needed so that we also have some other values or some other aspects in the discussion, not only the technology change. Perhaps Matti, you can start.
Yeah, and then this connects nicely with this kind of what kind of institutional innovations we need, because I think just kind of we need new institutional approaches in different parts. We need to kind of in goal setting that how do we create the vision and create the goals, and who should be involved, and because we've talked about the power dynamics, and it's funny because, for example, OECD actually suggested to Germany that when you're doing this kind of planning, make sure that you should involve all the marginalized people, all the immigrants, because if you're planning kind of societal transformation, those are the people who it affects most often quite can affect in quite harsh ways, and you know, to youth, and so how do we agree on those goals and make sure that they have broad acceptance? And then there's questions of how do we measure that we're going the right way? What are the kind of indicators? How we translate these ambitions in concrete goals that we can, and where do we get the data to do so? There's often lots of work involved, and then there's of course the implementation. How to coordinate this whole thing? How do we move from these goals to concrete plans? How do we try different approaches and decide which to continue with and which not, and how do we coordinate this cross-sectoral, cross-industry collaboration? So there's lots of work and lots of these kind of approaches that we're not used to doing, at least in such a strong scale, I think.
Well, this brings me also to the futures thinking capacity of people. Like, we have kind of touched on it, but you have all been in places and situations where you have had to think of the future prospects of human life on Earth or in Finland or wherever, or other life forms as well. So what do you think, how do you feel about people's futures thinking capacity in general? What are your personal experiences? Do you want to start sharing, Emilia?
I think it varies, as I've kind of stated before. You know, political ranges, it differs how you think about things. I'd say a lot of people aren't really, you know, they have this statement that I'm not afraid of this, but then maybe I should be because I'm younger. So I think the capacity of thinking ahead is not always great. And I mean, the fact that decisions are really being made to sustain a future generation, it says a lot about how much you actually care for the future generation. But there are hope. I have seen that the whole way of talking about these things have changed, which is really nice. But then again, I attended a conference quite recently that was a Baltic Sea conference. And I think I've never been so depressed after leaving a conference, ever. It was the first time I was really, wow, this is like attending, you know, this like grand conference, and people are, you know, really like pushing down on young people and saying that we're not doing enough and we're just, you know, wanting to have kind of rights, but we don't want to take any responsibilities. A lot of these claims, and that people were so supportive of this, that young people are just, I don't know, wanting to claim things. So yeah, just there's this huge generational gap that I'm experiencing. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but this was the first time I actually saw it with my own eyes. And I think it was really scary that I don't think a lot of you maybe don't even see it, how much power a lot of you hold. For example, now we're using the job market and just the shift. So yeah, I don't think we're taking care of the future generations right now.
What are your reflections on this, Matti?
Yeah, I think we're getting much better at imagining the first case scenarios and the negative futures, because we're seeing that how we would like the world to continue as it is and as being is not working, and then we're getting afraid. Okay, it's not looking good. But I think what we're not very good at is creating this kind of utopias and thinking what kind of positive futures we could achieve. What would the world look like that would fit in the planetary boundaries, and what would our lives look like? Because we're missing maybe these grand narratives. For example, Finland, we have had for long this kind of welfare state narrative that there's this prosperity and employment and redistribution, and it's a cycle that keeps on giving. But now it's breaking down. So what would be the alternative? And I think there's, capacity building in that respect definitely needed.
How many in the audience have recently been thinking like 20 years ahead or 50 years ahead? Raise your hand, please. Quite many. I would actually like to ad hoc use like 1 minute, take the closest person next to you and share your thoughts about where we should be heading for a positive future in the next 40 years, or by 2045 if we wish to connect to what Minister Multala brought up. So take your next, somebody next to you and chit-chat. No niin. No niin. No niin is the word that means now let's continue. Woohoo! So I hear that there's a lot of futures thinking in this room. So is anyone willing to share what you chatted? Yes, please.
Hello. I'm professor of healthcare science in Faculty of Medicine, Kristiina-Patja, and we were having very interesting discussion here about that if we are not accepting the concept of sustainable growth, which doesn't really exist in the planetary boundaries, by the way. So what does it mean to me and to my sector? What does it mean to different sectors? So we would really question also ourselves. I mean, are we really adding on a sustainable future or not? So I think going really thoroughly through the different sectors of society and then personalizing. I was working during the COVID, and I would say that COVID is not actually a really good example, because how many people were worried about some of the people you cared about during the COVID? Yeah, basically everybody. So it was a very personal crisis, and it is something that we can compare, but I can assure you that we would not have been able to maintain 100 years of COVID. But really questioning the sort of this sustainable growth. I think that would be really good for scientific community to do.
Thanks. Any other? While we are moving the mic, do you want to give some reflections, ad hoc reflections to the comment? Or the story or the future?
Well, thank you. Precisely so, I think. And I think the way I see, like industrial policy historically has been very growth-oriented. The way we did it in Finland after the World War II was basically building systems that relied on fossil fuels, and we aimed for more consumption of fossil fuels, basically. This was it. It was somehow founded, it might have been a good idea at the time, created a strong lock-ins of these systems and the ways we think about these. Of course, this was not a Finnish phenomenon, but very broad internationally. The role for industrial policy now is completely different in that sense. It's breaking these lock-ins, these paths that we then built, aim for less energy and material use. So how can we move about, how can we take care of our health and so forth with less energy and material use. How to create kind of this public luxury is one way to put it, and not so much through individual consumption. And I think that actually fits quite well this industrial policy thinking, but then there's this battle, of course, going on of the kind of imagination of industrial policy. So what are we thinking in Europe or elsewhere, and what are we thinking in Finland? What do we pursue? What are the social, ecological and economic and geopolitical goals of industrial policy? So I think that's a very acute kind of battleground, which is not so nuanced at the moment, obviously. We can do better.
Okay, then there was somebody else willing to share something of their discussion.
Hello, my name is Andrzej. I'm a recent graduate of the Creative Sustainability program at Aalto and currently artist resident at the Biofoundry at the Hammer University. And I guess one practical goal I'm inclined to work towards is setting aside 30%, minimum 30% of currently natural lands that are being extracted in one way or another, and adding it to the overall protective lands, fully isolated from the economic or human concerns, just kind of letting it go. So that's kind of and kind of how you guys maybe can speak to that. Thanks.
Do you think this target of setting 30% of land and completely aside from human activity, do you think that is a feasible future? Any reflections on that, Emilia or Matti?
Yeah, I think it should be, definitely. And kind of course, we're now in Finland battling with this kind of situation. We know our forestry use, and then we have this kind of natural minerals, critical raw materials, that we're facing the situations that first increasing pressure from the EU and from the economic growth perspective to just mine a lot of minerals that have lots of the negative effects, and kind of as the world shifts, we're facing these kind of situations, and they might come now, might come future in one form or another. So if we now are able to safeguard some of that, then I think long term we're in a much better place.
So now we had one team here discussing the healthcare future of healthcare, and another team discussing the future of nature conservation on terrestrial systems. Are there any other futures that you were thinking of that you want to share? Yes, back there, please.
Hi, I'm Astia. I join you from Graz, Austria Artificial Life Lab. I'm an architect and researcher. And we were discussing also the importance of the young generations, as you mentioned. And I was also speculating on a near future where maybe there is only one change in the international law where every country actually is supposed to use only their local resources for food, for industrial, technical things, and etc. And this would actually cause a change in us being able to develop some sort of literacy about our own food systems, our own plants, what can we build with, etc. Then we need to teach the young generation, how to forage for medicinal plants around, even in your city. So I think this would, even this kind of leverage points that we can do about local ecosystems can generate a positive feedback. So yeah, I totally agree with giving more attention to the younger generations.
Any reflections on that, Emilia, or just happily nodding?
I'm happily nodding, and it's always nice to hear some backup. And I definitely agree. I think it would be nice just having this kind of local aspect, and also maybe thinking about what you can eat locally, not just that are grown, but also maybe picking some, weeds, whatnot, and living more locally, being more connected. This again brings us back to the connectivity aspect. So definitely agreeing with this.
Do you want to continue from here and share your own thoughts of utopia in 2045 or beyond?
I think it would be amazing if people would be connected. I'm keeping on bringing this connectedness because it's like this Nokia commercial, bringing people together, connecting people. I don't know quite what it was, but that's kind of what we need so much of. It's not just the connectivity to nature, it's the connectivity to others. Because I don't know if you've ever felt that you're oh my God, this is the biggest fight ever and everyone is against you, this whole sustainability crisis. So you need to be connected to other people. You need to kind of get the power and get the empowerment from others. Because otherwise it's a really lonely fight, and it's a really big one. So I would like to see more connectivity from very many aspects. I think indigenous communities are a huge inspirational bag. I don't know how to frame it. But yeah, just the way they work, that they are connected and they kind of live off their lands. And yeah, so I think that's what I would want to see. And then, of course, if you could dream of bigger things, of course, systemic change would be awesome. Let's see how we can work that out. And yeah, just having a just future for all, not just for certain people, not just for certain communities, certain areas in the world, but for everyone. And I think this is kind of what we're seeing more and more today, that the gaps are getting bigger. Both, for example, economically, this rich-poor aspect, and all of these gaps are, you can't have a great world if there are gaps.
I want to jump here for a while and share something very personal related to this. Sometimes you have to be part of negotiations or work task forces, working groups, where you are the sole or almost sole defender of nature or climate change mitigation or some sustainability aspect. I was once, or many times, but now I'm thinking of one particular case where I was in a position of defending like sustainability aspects, and then around the table I had a lot of people, and somebody specifically who said that, oh, let's not get stuck into these tiny issues like science or like nitty-gritty like science, and even if it's been studied in Sweden, then how can we know it ever applies in Finland, and so forth and so forth. And then I came home, probably looking quite sad, because my daughter said, "Mama, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's been a bit hard day at work." And she said that, "Oh, what happened?" And I explained to her, and then she said that, "Mama, you should just use the power position." And I was like, "What?" And it goes like this, exactly. If you are standing, take like a strong position with your feet. Don't stand like this, and then you put like your hands like this, and then you look much bolder. And if you are sitting at a table, her instructions to me were like, sit always right opposite to the worst case person, and then never sit back and never go like this, but always sit at the front of your chair, put your elbows on the table, and then all the time stare right into the eyes of that person. And surprise, surprise, I started doing this. And though that person particularly grew so much smaller, and my voice was heard much better after that. It's so simple. We are social beings, so you can really do things. I wanted to share this with you because I know there are hard places every now and then for all of us. But please, Matti, do you want to share your future with us?
My future. I think we're kind of used to thinking about the future, that it's something more, something bigger, something nicer. But then again, I think in Finland, if we think how many of us is the happiest when at their summer cottage in the nature with maybe not much technology, close to nature with your close people. I think, and you mentioned indigenous people. We can also look at the past in Finland. It's not maybe so. There's lots of similarities. So I think many of us would like things to be smaller in the future, but for some reason we don't have. We struggle to make it reality. So I'd like my future to be a little bit smaller.
How many of you vote for a smaller future? Hands up. Quite many. Yes, I would say perhaps 85%. What about Paavo's future thoughts? Are they smaller than the current in some aspect or greater?
Greater. Well, my mind was kind of grabbed by this Nokia connecting people, because I have been thinking lately quite a lot about this generational idea that, because when I was studying in a business school, Nokia was doing fine. So I kind of, my adulthood began in a situation where we had huge agency in the world. There was this idea that we can do many things, and to me it wasn't this kind of imperialist mindset, but actually connecting people and doing something nice. with side effects, as always. But since then, it has kind of struck me that it seems that like when that momentum was kind of gone, the older kind of huge, I don't know what to call it, but the recovery to the idea that we have spare land, cheap forest, cheap whatever electricity, that we then just somehow produce and consume as much as possible, and that kind of gives us the kind of reason for being in the world, which is really strange to me, because it's not kind of advancing things, it's not taking agency in that sense that we can make a difference, and we can like collectively do stuff. So this kind of agency, the feeling also of agency, is very, very important, and I would like to have that in any case. Like, no matter how bad this gets, this idea that we collectively aim for things and pursue things together, that's super important.
Well, to me this now sounds like I have to ask, then do we even need innovations, or should we just make wise use of the things that we already have? What do you think, Matti?
Yeah, I think we need innovation. Of course, you know, personally I tend to highlight some of the critical aspects related to innovation, because that's challenges the dominant narrative, and we know that we're now realizing that innovations have also their downsides. If we hadn't been innovating for the last 300 years, we wouldn't have a climate crisis. But you know, what's innovation? It means we try to do things better, to develop something and put it into practice that has a positive impact. So I think we need innovations. We need to be careful of understanding what kind of effects they may have, and also we need to. We are also a little bit over-fascinated with novelty in some cases. So I kind of buy the argument that we also need to pay attention to how to use best what we already have, at how, you know, what kind of climate-friendly technologies we already have that we are not using. How can we get the whole Europe to use heat pumps, for example? The kind of this technology is there. The problems lie elsewhere. And then we need different kinds of innovation. We need social innovation. We need institutional innovation. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Let's take a kind of an opinion vote. How many of you think we have enough, or no, let's take the other way around. How many of you think we have to have more technological solutions to become more sustainable? Hands up. There are some hands up. Okay, so then how many of you think we need some socio-cultural innovations to... Okay, many more hands up, many more hands up this time, yeah. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, I would also say that the way that we talk about innovations is that innovations will save the world, as I think Sari Multala also kind of was pushing for, that innovations is the way to go. And I think innovations at this point, we're at this point where we need innovations, because they might help us come somewhere. But also, that can't be the only way forward. It can't just be green technology saving us from the, you know, destruction of the world.
Then I think Kirsi had some questions also there.
Yes, I can actually follow up on this, and this also linked to this industrial policy, and this comes from Presemo. After following very closely a startup in the field of traditional hard industry, I have identified two big bottlenecks for making innovation scaled up. big companies on the field that own the markets are not necessarily happy about innovations that change the whole process and come outside of their own company. And secondly, there are many problems with funding startups, so it's really not easy to get funding when you have a new company starting. So there seems to be that, well, a lot of these investors are just looking for these digital solutions which are really easy to scale up really fast. So what to do in this section, that how we can also boost this really positive innovation forward?
Who wants to start? Is this for Matti, perhaps?
Well, I can start. I think that's a kind of classic issue that for this kind of let's say dirty innovations or unsustainable, we're used to them. We know how they work. There's what if we buy them, we know what we get. Just less uncertainties. We have all the production networks, value chains, all the customers are used to them, and then there comes something new. They don't more sustainable, but people are suspicious of them. They don't know it yet. There's uncertainties. They don't have the economies of scale. So I think for innovation policies, industrial policies, we need to pay more attention to this part. That okay, how do we change the rules of the game? How do we shape the market so that it's better for new sustainable innovation? And there could be, we have this kind of, we don't have only policy instruments affecting the supply of new stuff, but also how to create the demand for it. And we had the demand in the first slides today, that how can we leverage public procurement to get first customers, references for sustainable innovation? How do we create standards and certificate that reduce the uncertainties? So we have lots of tools in our toolbox that we are not using to their full extent currently. And I think this is something that we're ignoring a little bit.
I would also like to point out, I agree with what you said. I think another aspect that we're often forgetting, and this is nothing to do with sustainability, but the fact that if you have a great product, and Finland has a lot of great products or innovations, or you call it whatnot, but you need to understand other markets. You can't just focus on your own markets, and you need to kind of have this power position and be like, this is amazing, please take it. So when innovating, also focus on how to kind of sell it, because that is a huge part of how you kind of promote yourself. And I've lived in Sweden for 8 years. We are not so great at it yet, but I hope you will, take this forward and do better.
I have another question to you on this topic. Do you think that young people's voices are sufficiently heard in sustainability innovation? And if not, then what should be done to get young people especially involved in futures thinking and innovation and sustainability innovation?
I think the crowd here is from different age groups, so I would like to ask you, how many of you have been in student councils or active when you were under 30 and tried to make some sort of impact? Okay, some. But not all. I think nowadays it's a lot more common to be engaged, and you're wanting to have youth represented. The downside on this is that it's one thing being there, but it's another thing that you're actually being listened to and heard. So those are two different things. I can be here on stage, but will you listen to me and take something out of it? I don't know. I hope so. So there's this aspect of youth washing, and it's kind of like greenwashing. It makes you look better, but you don't take anything out of it. It's just like a flashy, we invited young people. And I think the way that, governments are voting and what decisions are being made, that's an answer to this. No, we're not being heard. Because all the choices that they are making are the opposite of what the young people are wanting. We want systemic change. We want a better future. We want whatnot. But none of these things are being voted for.
Yes, we have a question from the audience.
Actually, do you think that when our kids would be decision makers, then the change will happen? Do we have to wait? Just a quick comment, because that's exactly what we were discussing about the future and how we see the future, and we were worried about our kids and the pressure on their shoulder. But somehow I hope that because I'm a scientist and I've been powered down myself, but now I have kids, and I've learned my lesson, and they learned it at school, so education now is also promoting this thinking, and I feel like maybe when our kids will be decision makers, then the change will happen, and maybe it's too slow, but I'm hoping that it will then happen.
I think, and I hope it will happen continuously, as you know, maybe some of you have children, and you might think and reflect about this. So I definitely hope that it's starting and that you're giving the space, and just the fact that you're actually listening to another person and hearing them. This has kind of got to do with leadership also. When you're having new employees, take them into account and really see them, hear them out. It's really important. It's something that strengthens the connectivity again. So, yeah, I hope it will happen sooner. But, yeah, I guess we'll have to see.
Okay.
If you don't have anything burning to add, I will let Kirsi to continue. But if you have some burning to add, of course, you may.
Okay. This links to what I think that what the ministry was already talking to us, as well as the Emilia's statement, step up or step aside. So there's one question from the audience. Could the trust in science in Finland be high compared to other countries because scientists have stayed away from political discussions and not been bold as they should in societal interaction? And of course that links to the whole community, every one of us, what we are doing and what kind of role, and that also links to Susanna's example, how to make this kind of power stand. So what your thoughts on this? Should we be more bold and more taking part for the societal discussion?
Who wants to start? Paavo?
Well, just a curious thing to me is that what we are now feeling or going through in the Finnish society, there's no one in the streets. Well, there's some people in the streets, but there's not so much uproar, although historical shifts have been done in the kind of in the politics, the kind of older like job market rules and power relations and so forth, they have just been basically broken down, and it just went like that, which is somehow curious. I think this is just one example. So I think there's a real lack of kind of like what does it mean to be bold, societally bold in Finland? It's not very easy to answer. My kind of personal route then is to like really determinedly like work with these issues and find the right people that are working with those institutionally and outside institutions. But this is kind of happening behind the scenes and doesn't perhaps create this collective sense, public sense of somebody doing something. So yeah, it's an open question for me. What is societal boldness here? It takes different forms in different places.
Yeah, and would it then erode the credibility of us scientists if we stood out like more? Do you want to continue from here, Paavo?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting questions of where the traditional trust in science and this kind of evidence-based policy and so on has come from. I don't know if I have answered that. We of course know that now the trust in science is eroded by this kind of it's challenged by political motivations, and it's a kind of standard page from certain people's playbook. But I kind of think that I kind of balance here that I think it's really important to say things as they are, and of course we're talking about normative issues. You know, sustainability science cannot be totally separated from. It has clear political implications. So, kind of, it's no use hiding that isn't the case. But then, on the other hand, I feel that for different audiences, I find myself adjusting to kind of jargon and narrative and way of talking with these things. And I'm not sure kind of what the right level of there would be in different situations. Should I be more provocative for certain people and challenge them more, even more strongly? Or is it better to talk with those words and narratives that they already know and are familiar with? So I'm not sure what's the best strategy in each situation, but I think it's no use trying to say that these aren't political issues.
What are your guidelines or expectations towards young scientists or senior scientists? Or do you know what youth expects from us?
I think we definitely expect you to speak up. I think there can always be more kind of active democracy, active engagement in society, and not just in these types of forums. So I think definitely they could be more heard in, I don't know, Hesare or whatever. So definitely yes. And I think what you brought up, like how we communicate, is also an aspect that I think especially people, marginalized groups, women, or young people or whatnot think about, especially how do you present yourself. I've been on stage laughing, crying, singing, all the ranges, and what is the appropriate? You kind of have to figure it out and think about your audience and see like how you get them the best to listen. But it's hard. It's definitely hard.
Yeah, there is this old saying about getting out of your comfort zone. I think defending sustainability issues certainly takes us in many circles if we go outside of our own bubble, into our outside of our comfort zone. This, I think, has been a very friendly, comfortable session. I think we have had a fantastic audience here. You have been active, you have been raising your hands, voting, you have been chatting about futures, and you have been even sharing. We couldn't, of course, share all those futures, but maybe you can continue sharing later. And I'm really grateful also to our dear panelists, and of course my colleague Kirsi also here, for the, I think, very good discussion. So we have been grilling you here now for quite a long time, so let's give a very big hand to our panelists. And I hope after this you have gained even more strength to go to panels where you definitely are outside of your comfort zone and take the power positions if needed. And next we will have a 15-minute break. I see my computer clock and that one are not exactly the same, so mine is a bit ahead of that. But nevertheless, 15-minute break before the next sessions. And please relax and enjoy the upcoming sessions.